Hello everyone, welcome back on another Friday the 13th. My name's Kenny and I'm still committed to reviewing every single Friday the 13th, one Friday the 13th at a time. As of right now, I'm diving into Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Ever since I set out to review the series, Part 6 has been one of those that I've been looking forward to rewatching for a while.
Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
It's been a long time since I've seen it, and I just have so many fond memories around this entry. But after watching it again all these years later, I must admit Friday the 13th Part 6 isn't quite what I remember it to be. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's a great movie. But even with those rose-colored glasses of nostalgia, some cracks started to show this time through. But before I get into that, let me start with everything that, even after all these years, still impresses me. The opening sequence is incredible. I loved it back when I was a kid, and I think I appreciate it even more today. The atmosphere was done perfectly. The heavy fog creeping out of the forest, the graveyard with its gnarled trees all surrounded by that wrought iron fence, all on a dark and stormy night. They couldn't have achieved any more of a classic gothic feel than they did right here. Right down to the perfect reveal of Jason's tombstone amid cracks of thunder and flashes of lightning. I mean, talk about an iconic shot. I wish I could have watched this in theaters. I'd love to have experienced the audience reaction to this moment right here. Then there's the reveal of Jason's rotting corpse, and I don't know what I liked more. The cobwebs, the spiders, the worms, the maggots, or is it the fact that when Tommy's impaling Jason, all of that crap goes tumbling off of his face? Little shots like these that focus on the smaller bits of detail, they go a long way in making the movie experience just that much more immersive. Well, not much longer after this, lightning strikes in the most epic, high explosive way possible, bringing Jason back to life. And if the crowd wasn't cheering yet, they would be at this point right here. This new reanimated Jason is more powerful than we'd ever seen him before, and his new superhuman strength gives him the ability to pull off some of the most fun and entertaining kills. He punches a heart out right through someone's body. He rips off a head with his bare hands, and in one of my favorite moments, he folds someone in half. Backwards! The only thing holding this movie back in terms of kills is the censorship. Unfortunately, this was during an era of, shall we say, high involvement from the MPAA, which left far too much of this movie on the cutting room floor. The censorship here wasn't as bad as back in Part 5, where those edits were basically made for TV.
Hey! Hey!
Something that really stands out in Part 6 that makes it so remarkable, especially compared to the rest of the franchise, this is basically the only one with an actual plot and has characters that are, dare I say, nuanced. Every other movie in this series is basically a montage of generic teenagers doing generic teenager things until they die.
Ted! Hey, Ted, where the hell's corkscrew?
Part 4 tried to include a through line with that guy avenging his sister's death, but it pretty much dissolved as soon as he was killed, and his subplot didn't end up going anywhere. Here we get more grounded and realistic characters, especially when compared to other slashers at the time. The standout here, obviously, is Tommy Jarvis. He's not here just for the sake of bringing back a familiar face. I mean, he was here for a clear purpose, and he actually goes through a bit of growth as a character. Altogether, they really honored his history from the previous entries. When we first meet him, we see that he still hasn't gotten over his childhood trauma. He's only become more obsessed with Jason, to the point that he's not just willing, but compelled enough to set out on a dark and stormy night to prove to himself that Jason is really dead. Now, ironically, it's his obsession that brings Jason back to life. And that's really the catalyst for not just the rest of the movie, but the rest of the franchise. And what I love about Tommy being the one that brings Jason back isn't just the irony. It's the poetic justice of it. A man haunted by his childhood trauma, unable to let it go, ends up resurrecting the very monster that caused it, forcing him to confront his tormentor once again. Only this time, as an adult, he's more capable of facing Jason. And, with a little help from his love interest, he's able to conquer his demon. Sure, a few people died along the way, but by the end, Tommy can finally be at peace knowing that Jason has returned to his proper resting place at the bottom of Crystal Lake. Now, of course, we know that Jason comes back and the franchise keeps going, but for Tommy at this moment, this is a perfect end to his story. Sheriff Garris was also surprisingly nuanced. His role played more or less two parts. He acted as a secondary antagonist. It was him, after all, who stood in the way of Tommy defeating Jason, even going so far as accusing Tommy of committing all those murders.
You gotta cool out, boy. You already almost got your head blown off.
Even so, you can't help but like the guy. And that's because he means so well. All of his actions came from a place of concern. You know, he was honestly doing what he thought was best to protect the people of his town and keeping that seemingly crazy guy away from his daughter. This movie also had a lot of interesting and fun side characters. I really liked Court. He was always my favorite of the counselors. I think it has to do with the fact that when I was a kid, I always thought his ripped up jeans and headphones were so cool. You know, it didn't take much to impress me back then. I always looked forward to those paintballers, especially that sexist chauvinist.
Dumb broad. She tricked. She should have stayed in the kitchen where she belongs.
I always thought he paired well with that nerdy guy who was just so out of place in the forest. I think it's hilarious that these two guys work in the same place. I'd love to see a spin-off of just these two guys. And these paintballers remind me a lot of those bikers from part 3. They kind of come out of nowhere, and they really only serve as just some more people for Jason to kill. The bikers, though, from part 3, they actually crossed paths with the main characters, and their stories kind of overlapped a little. I really wish they could have done the same with these paintballers. You know, maybe a few could have survived and teamed up with Tommy or something to help. I don't know, just something to have them more incorporated into the plot. Because as much as these paintballers stand out as being characters from the franchise, I always have a hard time remembering which movie they came from because everything about them and their story is just so isolated from everything else. The last thing regarding characters I wanted to address is the inclusion of, second only to Crazy Ralph, my favorite Friday the 13th side character. That cemetery caretaker, and I don't even know his name, is absolutely hilarious. And even though he's only in a few scenes, he stands out to me as being one of the most memorable people in the entire franchise.
Does he think I'm a farthead?
To me, he seems kind of like a continuation from some of the slapstick characters in part 5. He could even pass as being a distant relative to Ethel and Jr. But thankfully, the overall tone of this character is much less in your face. Sure, this guy was a bit eccentric, enough to offer some fun comic relief, but not so much that you couldn't imagine knowing someone like him in real life.
Hell, I'm a damn high school graduate. I deserve this job. I earned it.
So I brought up that part 6 doesn't necessarily hold up as well as I remember it. And I want to get to some of those reasons. But first, I want to invite you to check out my second channel where I live stream popular video games like RoboCop, Rogue City, and The Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. Right now I'm having a lot of fun playing through The Division 2. You know, if you shoot yourself just a little bit every day, you become immune to bullets.
That's true, you don't die.
If you prefer your live streams through Twitch, I can also be found there. So don't be shy. Come through and hang out. I'd love to chat with you. Okay, so as I get into what I felt to be the negatives, I want to make it clear that none of these things are bad enough for me to hate this movie. I still think it's a strong entry in the franchise, but I just couldn't help notice these few things this time through. First of all, the fact that the police never believe Tommy until the very end, when it's too late, is just annoying. I don't mind the police not believing Tommy at first. It makes sense that they think he's crazy, but I mean, Tommy never convinces them. I wish that somehow Sheriff Garris could have caught on sooner that Jason was back and teamed up with Tommy, because I really would have liked seeing them work together. It isn't until they're faced with Jason when they start to piece together what's going on. And in the meantime, we're just going through a boring and repetitive narrative of Tommy's crazy, lock him up. Okay, let him go. Okay, lock him up again. Tommy spends way too much time in a jail cell, and all the scenes in that police station just start to blur together. And this isn't just boring, it's quite frankly not fair to Tommy as a character. He never convinces the police or earns their support. They just go on thinking that it's him until they come across Jason themselves, and by then, they're dead. And the biggest thing that bothered me this time through, and I must admit, it hurts to realize this, and I know this won't be a popular opinion, I don't like Jason here. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be lambasted in the comments over this opinion, so let me first emphasize what I liked about Jason here. First of all, it's actually Jason. I'm glad they didn't double down on what Part 5 was going for and bring back some other imposter. That idea was fun for a one-off, but ultimately bringing Jason back was the right thing to do. I already brought up his superhuman strength. I think that was also the right move. Jason always seemed more powerful than a regular person, so bringing him back as even more powerful, it just makes sense. And like I said before, it makes his kills a lot more fun and entertaining.
Hey, Nicky, what are you doing back there? Taking a dump?
Jason's makeup effects are great here. I love the opening sequence before he puts on his mask. I'm completely convinced that this Jason has been buried and rotting for years. But other than that, I must say, I think this is one of the least impressive Jasons. Definitely the worst in the franchise up to this point. And I know that won't be a popular opinion, but hear me out. His clothes are just too new. He's been rotting underground for all these years, and his clothes just look a little dirty with a few rips and tears. I know it's a small thing, but in just too many of the scenes, especially in daytime, it just looks like he's wearing a costume, and it breaks the immersion. Also, I'm not really a fan of his utility belt. I don't mind Jason using different weapons throughout all of his kills, but I don't need him to be all organized about it, like he's Sam Fisher or something.
One shot, one kill.
There were two different actors who played Jason here, and I wasn't a fan of either one. Dan Bradley was the original actor, but he was let go after gaining a few pounds, which is definitely visible in a few of the scenes. That also breaks the immersion when you're trying to watch, a resurrected, rotted Jason attacking someone with a few love handles. The actor who replaced him, CJ Graham, he just didn't exude Jason energy to me. I can't get this scene out of my head. Just the derpy way he stands there. Nothing about this is menacing. And he's supposed to have all this superhuman strength, but I can never unsee that slight off-balance stumble he does crashing through the door. No. That's how you crash through a door. Like that. Well, now that I probably pissed a bunch of you off, I'm going to sign off. Thanks for watching, everyone. Remember to check out my second channel to join in on my live streams. Goodbye. I didn't like Jason in a Jason movie. Oh my gosh. Bring on the hate comments, everyone. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Too bad about Kenny, huh? Life in the big city.